Welcome back to the Rebel's Edge, folks. We're about to cover a stock that started out looking like it was going to go to the moon, Alice, and instead it's reversed and it's going straight down. We'll have that and a whole lot more on today's Rebel's Edge.
Here we go, ready to rock and roll. I'll tell you what, for the people who don't know John, if I get one more Batman video, no, I'm just kidding. They are entertaining.
That is Peter Holmes. Mm-hmm. And if you guys liked that Batman video from yesterday, you should definitely follow this guy. He is a comedian that is a regular stand-up comedian, Pete, but somehow he came upon the idea of doing Batman and having comical exchanges with the Flash and Aquaman, or Aquafina as he calls him. Hey, Aquafina. The sun.
God.
He is just the best. Peter Holmes, you are the best. We got to do a Rebels Extra with you, my man, especially if you'll do it in that Batman costume.
The whole thing.
But no, he is the best, folks. Check out Peter Holmes. He's, like I say, very talented stand-up comic, and he's the guy responsible for these crazy Batman and the Justice League takeoffs. But anyway, you tuned in for the Rebel's Edge, so you're in the right place. Pete and I are going to cover, and that's Pete, by the way, we're going to cover Macro Minute, Fantastic Futures, 4 stocks, and then Pete's Red Zone Sports. So, Jared, let's dive into the Macro Minute. And I'm going to say, Pete, that the Macro Minute today is pretty damn easy because the SEC jumped the gun. And no, this is not me saying Gary Gensler's an idiot. I'll let you guys decide that. But I will say that when their Twitter account, Pete, puts out ETF approved for a spot Bitcoin ETF, and the stocks or Bitcoin spikes, and then it crashes when they say, not so fast, we didn't approve that release yet. It's like, holy crap. It's market manipulation by the guys that are in charge of watching market manipulation.
Yeah, you know what, John? It is one of these situations, though, where you get hacked, and that is probably the most dangerous part of what we all are involved with now in the world that we live in right now. All the connectivity and all of the different sites and this and that, and all the the various things that can come at us. This is a big story, though. This is a monstrous story because we've been waiting for exactly this, right? But it turned out that this wasn't really quite ready yet. So we'll hear about it sooner or later, but definitely caused some very big volatility after the market hours yesterday, which caused a lot of people to start fretting. And then, was it real? Was it not? And then the questions begin, and everybody's going in this terrible circle. But that is a big story, and it certainly did impact things overnight. A little bit less today. I think people have finally settled down a little bit.
Yeah, thank goodness. And, you just have to feel sorry anytime there's a release like that for both sides, for the bulls and the bears, because both sides got clocked on that. How would you like to have been short and have it go $2,000 in your face per Bitcoin? And then it reverses back, and you were worried that maybe it was going to keep going up at 20,000 more or whatever. Anyway, you can see why those kinds of hacks and releases of very vital information like that, thank God we don't see it that often, Pete. It's usually just congressmen trading on insider information. Let's talk, Pete, about Fantastic Futures.
Fantastic Futures.
Futures man making his way across the screen there. Good work, Jared. I'm going to say, Pete, that my Fantastic Futures are the bonds, 10-year I'm going to cover, because we've got the inflation data due tomorrow for December, Pete. And that is going to be a driver. And so I think everybody who follows bonds and their impact on the NASDAQ in particular will be watching for that. What's yours?
Yeah, I'll tell you, John, it's, rates are something that we are all focused on. I think we've obviously, over the last couple of years, it's been the primary focus, treasuries, everything else. How about mortgage rates dropping and home prices jumping? And that's something that we are starting to see, and it's been pretty pleasant. As a matter of fact, John, I bet you don't know the answer to this unless you saw the story, but do you know which city seemed to be on one of the best paths as far as home prices jumping?
Dallas.
It's Detroit.
I would have said Dallas
Detroit,
or Miami.
Yeah, and Miami was listed and blah blah blah. But anyway, that's the side story of it all. But I think the reality is, as these rates have come down, suddenly we're seeing those home prices start to jump again. So that's probably a great thing for a lot of the folks out there that are trying to make those decisions whether or not they want to buy or want to sell. And certainly, this is something that's affecting markets as well.
Absolutely. Well, lower interest rates are going to be better for takeovers and so forth. And yeah, we cover a lot of that here on the show. And hopefully we'll hear a lot more about what's going on with mergers and acquisitions, M&A, Pete. Let's talk about Aehr Test Systems. These guys down sharply because they lowered full year guidance. That's never going to be a good thing. And they said they were likely to be impacted by the anticipated delay in the timing of new orders from customers, some of which, since these guys are running tests and so forth on microchips and so forth, semiconductor chips, a lot of these EVs are not in the huge demand that they were, which is kind of surprising to me. But nonetheless, if the EVs aren't in demand, those chips are not in demand either.
Right. And we're starting to see them start to pile up. When I say them, it's the EVs. And that's, you can just take a look. If you just Google it, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. I mean, they are starting to stack up, and a lot of people being concerned, and the cost and everything else that goes into it. That makes this thing very, very interesting. They crushed it, John, on the quarter, though. Everything, those numbers were great. But as we always say, that's important. But the next most important thing probably is the guidance. And when you give the guidance that they gave, that's something that everybody's going to focus on. And suddenly they turned out and the palms were out, meaning they're selling. This is a stock that's down, 15, 16% today? Pretty amazing move to the downside. It blew through and now established even new 52-week lows. It just shows you how fast people are willing to turn, and they turned on this one in a hurry. I don't think they do have a good balance sheet. I don't think until we start reading more about people getting attracted to EVs again, John, until we see that, I would stay away from this name.
Yeah, I mean, the highs were hit in August this last year, folks, and it was about $55 or something close to that. And today it's trading $18.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely not one of those tech stocks in the NASDAQ that you'd figure, oh, yeah, can't lose by buying a tech stock. Yes, you can. All right, let's talk, Pete, about Intuitive Surgical. If you guys haven't followed this one, you've missed a lot because it's one of the top performing stocks of the last decade. Intuitive Surgical, basically, that with their Da Vinci machine, you could have a doctor anywhere in the world, Pete, performing a surgery, microsurgery or regular, with these robotic arms of the Da Vinci machine. And meanwhile, the doctor might not even be in the same zip code, might be completely in another state because maybe he or she is an expert on that particular type of surgery, and maybe the machine is more accurate than a human and is not going to have any shakes or anything else. It's an amazing device, isn't it, Pete?
It is. It's absolutely incredible. It's something that we've talked about for a long time, and you and I were talking just before we came to the show. ISRG is one of those names that I oftentimes, John, used as a barometer of the economy and what's going on. And the reason I say that is it's very expensive. This is not something that, just a little bit of money that you've got to put out and you're going to do it through all your hospitals. This is a very, very expensive thing. So I think it's something that you want to keep an eye on that. Now, the strong guidance is there, but here's the other thing, John. The procedures were up 22%, and the systems themselves, they're selling at about a 12% gain year over year as well. When you look at their balance sheet, absolutely pristine. You've got $6.5 billion in cash, free cash flow of $1.5 billion. Not so bad. The one thing that I would say is it's trading at about a 50 PE right now. That's a little bit steep. So that would be one reason to have a little bit of caution. But if the economy is good, this is one of those stocks that oftentimes does move with the market to the upside when the economy is getting good and getting better and better.
Yeah, it's something right out of the future, Pete. When you see a Da Vinci, and as Pete said, it's probably between $2 and $3 million per machine. So if you've got a surgical suite and you maybe have several of them and you have to staff them up with these Da Vinci machines, you're chasing a lot of money there. But then again, your doctors in your hospital don't have to be the draw anymore. Now that doctor could be operating, like I say, from Wisconsin on a guy in Wyoming, for instance. All right, so great earnings there, Pete. Good guidance and so forth. They're expected to have them increase by about 13% to 16% in 2024. So good news. Let's talk about TGTX. This is the stock, Pete, that was zooming to the upside in the pre, and then tragedy struck. And the tragedy, I guess, is the guidance is not what the street was looking for. But my gosh, they were up over $23 in the pre, Pete. Right now, they're slamming down and trading at the lows of the day, even though they entered into this deal to basically take some of Precision Biosciences licenses for some of their cell therapy programs. It's a pretty big turnaround, Pete.
Yeah, and the initial reaction, as you said, John, it was positive. This is a stock that jumped up pretty nicely, right? Well over $22. And the next thing you know, it starts to fall. And that fall did happen fairly rapidly. So there must have been something late in the release that got there. And then suddenly the palms are out, everybody was selling, and it turned into the stock that it is right now, which is down what? It's down 8-10%, something like that. It's definitely getting hit to the downside. I think it was in the 17s. It was in the 19s. So it's getting punished. Shorts are amazingly high in here, John. So they're getting it right. At what point do they turn and decide maybe it's time to start buying? That would be something interesting as well. About 25% of the outstanding shares are short. So that's a monstrous number. Now, they do have a cash burn as well of about $40 million. So there's a lot of different reasons why this company's got to do everything right. And everything that they delivered early sounded great, but there had to have been something late that certainly turned things around. And that's why the stock is under so much pressure. I'd be interested in at least keeping a very close eye on this one, because anything positive that could come out about whatever was said late could turn this stock back around at some point, maybe not today, but at some point in the near future. So I'd be keeping a very close eye on this name right now.
My gosh, Pete. I mean, Halloween, the stock was $7.60, something like that. Yeah. Today, it hit $22.67. It opened at $22.55 or something like that. And now it's $17.37, Pete. I mean, it's just getting slam danced to the downside. And my gosh, you can see how you could get overextended on a run to the upside, which this one apparently clearly did. All right, let's talk about Toast, T-O-S-T, because founded by three geniuses over at MIT, Pete, they provide integrated point of sale, or POS, for devices, software, billing, payments, and all that. If you've been to a restaurant, and I have, where I've seen these in use, Pete, it's, for the most part, it's the device they bring out to the table, and they hold it up to your table. They say, oh, would you like to put a tip on there, sir? And you tap your credit card or drag it, whatever. It's a very interesting play, but my gosh, Toast, it isn't toast, but it is certainly struggling a little bit today, Pete.
Yeah, Goldman Sachs comes out with a buy. They say it's worth $24. Could it be? Sure. The one problem I have with it, John, is now this is a stock that's been in the market for a while, the public markets, and they don't have earnings yet. Now, they're doing a lot of things right. They certainly have a great balance sheet, so you've got to be impressed with that. But again, and you and I bring this up a lot oftentimes, when are they going to start showing us that they know how to make money and can make money? And that's a bit of a problem. So I think that's one issue that they've got to get over that hurdle. But Goldman Sachs, certainly that speaks volumes that they think that this stock has a little bit of room to the upside here. So I certainly would dig a little bit deeper. Right now, I'd be staying away because of the fact they're not making a lot of money, but the balance sheet is pretty dang nice. So they have room. If they do it right, I think they could start to make some money.
Yeah, they basically need more penetration. And they've got competitors too, which is why, Pete, I think when they came out, they were in the high 50s, maybe $60 a share, and they've come down pretty dramatically. So it's competition, and it's, to get these devices in more people's hands in restaurants and things like that is a big deal. But we'll see if Goldman's right or if they're wrong. All right, let's take a look, Pete, at some sports, and in particular, a nice reel that we pulled from Instagram. And this is a reel about the playoff picture and what we got coming up, the NFC playoff picture. So let's give it a listen and comment, Pete.
The AFC playoff picture had a lot of arguing. So what do you say, NFC? Can we keep things a little more positive? Someone please shoot me. Never mind. God, what happened to you guys? You look pathetic. Us? Oh, no. We can't do anything right, and our defense is made of soggy napkins. And every week is a game of what injury is our quarterback going to pick up this time. If you're wondering, the answer this week is a snap.
He's a clever son of a gun.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, come on. You guys beat us in the NFC title game last year. Now you can't even keep it together for a first-round game against the Bucs? The winners of the
NFL's
how
he's got those shirts, but that's not actually on the shirt.
Right here. Yeah, that's the problem. Maybe you guys are right. Maybe we can win a game or two.
I am right
got a
here.
notification that A.J. Brown has been abducted by vultures and Jason Kelsey spontaneously busted. Man, it's just not your year. That's okay. It's not the Cowboys' year either. Hey, it's always our year. Aside from the fact that that doesn't make any sense because you haven't won a Super Bowl in 30 years, it's definitely not your year. You have to come play us in Dallas. What makes you so confident? The fact that we've beaten you in Dallas 4 times in a row and 9 of our last 10 matchups overall? Oh, yeah, I guess that's a pretty good reason. But you had Rodgers for all
great stats, though, right? He's going back
Hall of
and
Fame
forth
quarterback
with
is, so get ready for more of the same. You guys love to flex the fact that you've had Hall of Fame quarterback play for the last 30 years as if it's not incredibly embarrassing that you only have 2 rings to show for it. Yeah, you wasted good quarterback play almost as much as the Lions did for 12 years. Hey, I thought we were cool. Our trade was a win-win. Is that what you call us winning?
You went to a
You guys
Super Bowl.
are fun to watch or whatever? We're going to make Stafford regret leaving Detroit. No one has ever regretted leaving Detroit. Oh, hey, Nick Sirianni just fell into a volcano. You guys are really unlucky. No, this one might be a good thing.
I'll tell you, he's a clever son of a gun, man. That's awesome. Can you imagine how long that must take to put all that together to do that, John?
Bench warmer brand. Again, we like sharing those with you folks because when we find somebody like Peter Holmes or Bench warmer brand, it's fun for you guys to follow along with them too. Might not make you money. We try to make you money at the top of the show, and maybe if you listen to Pete about betting, maybe you'll make money in the sports section too. But okay, Pete, so what are we going to talk about as far as your red zone sports?
Well, I think we start off, John, with college football now handing the baton off to college basketball, but it's been a monster year for college football. And you hear far more about the portal and the NIL when it comes to football than you ever do about any other sport, male or female, at the college level. And it's because college football, they absolutely rule. Outside of the NFL, the next closest out there in the sports world is definitely college football. Absolutely incredible. But John, it's become something really, really interesting to try to see how this portal is changing teams and schools and all of the rest of it, because we all know that a lot of kids out there want to go to schools where they know the football is going to be great. Maybe they like the basketball too, but those are your 2 big revenue sports, right? So I look at Georgia, for instance, and how about this kid from UNLV who's in the transfer portal, right? Jaden Maiava. He is committed to Georgia, and then he flipped to USC, and that was told to us by his father. So that whole thing's kind of interesting. And then you look at USC. Well, why is the kid going there? They've got all these 5-star quarterbacks. Well, because Nelson just left USC to go to Boise State, and Georgia just lost Dylan Raiola to Nebraska, of all places. So it just shows you, John, the power of what's going on within the portal, within NIL, and how these players are going. They are doing a magical job, because think about this, and you bring it up and I bring it up all the time, but Brock Purdy's making $850,000. And there are probably at least 10 or 15 quarterbacks in college football that are making more than Brock Purdy is. And some of them making extremely more amounts of cash than Brock Purdy is. So it's an incredible thing. And we watch it, constantly. By the way, USC on their backup quarterback, John, Miles Moss, all he did was throw 6 touchdowns and an interception and then 372 yards. So it's not like they're needing quarterbacks at USC right now, and yet they're still getting them. It's absolutely amazing to see how the portal works, how NIL works and influences these kids. And I just wonder, John, do you think that the kids are understanding the NIL money? Do they understand the tax ramifications and everything else? They are becoming professional athletes, even though we still call them amateurs. They're professional athletes, right? And they've got to figure out all of the financing that goes into this whole thing, and what do they owe? You know, what are their taxes and all the rest of it? It's a very complicated thing going on right now in college sports.
Well, to your point, Pete, Arch Manning, named after his grandfather, Archie, and the son of not Eli or Peyton, but their older brother that was a wide receiver, but then was injured and couldn't continue at Mississippi. So that kid's getting $2.8 million, and he's not stepping foot on the field in Texas with Ewers there. So we'll even see if he stays there, Pete. But Brock Purdy gets $875,000, and this guy who's just nursing a $2.8 million. Now, one thing about him though, Pete, is that he will clearly have great financial guidance, because that's what his dad does for the other two Mannings, for Eli and Peyton. And last I checked, those are two of the richest quarterbacks behind Brady. Guys, none of them that had the contracts like these guys have now. They didn't have Justin Herbert money. They didn't have Mahomes money, and he just got a new deal too, by the way. This is, I think he'll get good advice. I'll say that.
Yeah. The other thing I want to jump on, because you've been all over this, John, but we now got some of the fresh numbers from the NFL, and you want to talk about ratings monsters. How about this? The regular season viewers, 17.9 million for this past year, the second highest since 1995. Absolutely incredible what the NFL has been able to do. And it shows also, John, how about the parody? Now, you and I brought this up early in the season. We were talking about how so many teams are vying for a spot, for a playoff spot, because parity really does exist in the NFL to a major degree. How about this? 272 games played, 113 decided by 6 points or less. It's just incredible how the NFL did this flip around. The greatest example of all of them, of course, is Houston, and what they were able to accomplish because of the draft, because of some free agency and a new coach and everything else. But it shows you that it can happen, and the NFL is playing this out in a really amazing way. I got two other numbers for you, though, John. Ravens 49ers, 28 million people watched that. So that's maybe a prelude to the Super Bowl. Philly KC, last year's Super Bowl matchup, 29 million people watched that. So the NFL, they still own it when it comes to ratings on television, John. They just continue to be the masters. And as you pointed out, what's that stat again? 93 of the top 100 were NFL games in terms of ratings.
Yep, and 4 of the next best were college football games. So in other words, 97 out of 100 were pro or college football, obviously dominated by pro. And then the others were, like nobody else shows up, Pete. Live sports and betting make that just basically a match made in heaven. It's great for ratings because people want to watch it while they can still bet on it. And more states have made that legal so they can sit there on their phones and bet play by play, practically, certainly quarter by quarter. And with all the parlay bets and everything else, and fantasy football being as big as it is, the NFL, yeah, they're a monster, and they're just getting bigger.
John, I'll give you one last quick take, which is this. Mike Vrabel got fired. Now, I don't know what you thought about it, but it just shows you that the NFL does mean not for long, because he had 4 consecutive winning seasons. He was the NFL Coach of the Year in 2021. They struggled in 22 and 23, and the GM and the owner said no mas, and he's gone. Where do you think he ends up? Does he go to college? Does he go to some other NFL's opening, maybe the Raiders or something like that? He would fit pretty well. Although Jim Harbaugh might fit pretty good there too, by the way, and has talked about that. But where do you think he ends up? Some people think maybe he just makes a return to New England. Maybe he goes back to the Pats and he joins Belichick.
I think they liked him there, Pete, both the fans and the owner, Kraft. So I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised, Pete, if he ended up in Washington, taking over Ron Rivera's job. I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up in Carolina because, both those are East Coast teams, along with, New England. So depending on his family, I would say any of those three would be likely. The Raiders would be another, and he's going to get a lot of looks, no doubt about that. A coach of the year rather than just some guy who got fired after having 3 bad seasons is more likely to get the next plum job if Harbaugh doesn't get it.
Yeah. Should be interesting.
Right. Well, we'll be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time, folks. Remember, you can get a free book by going to itsnotanoption.com. That's itsnotanoption.com. You get a free book. You can claim it there. Just type in your name, email address, and so forth, and we'll send it out to you. And we'll be back tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern time.